We're continuing on through the book of Deuteronomy, the theme being loving the God who loves you. And today, the passage that we will be looking at is Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 1 through 18. And the title of today's message is Giving That Is Holy, Part 2. Are you the kind of person who finds it easy to lend, or do you tend to be tight-fisted? Personally, I don't like to lend. But before you start judging me, let me complete the thought. I prefer to give than to lend. When you lend somebody money, you're saddled with expectations that the person is going to pay you back. Isn't that right? Amen. But that can ruin relationships when the agreed upon date for repayment comes and goes. It gets bad when you know that the person who owes you is ducking you. Have you ever experienced that? You know, it can really mess up relationships. So, it's better to help somebody if you can with no strings attached. If they decide to pay you back, that's okay. If they don't, it's okay because you don't have any expectation that they're going to do so. That's why I don't like to lend. If I can help you, I'll just give you what it is that I can do to help you out. And that way, I won't get mad at you later. So I remember years ago lending someone some money, and it was money that I needed for some bills. And the person said, I really need this money. I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back when I get paid. I'll pay you back in a week. I said, okay, but this is money I need for my bills, so I'm counting on you to give me that money. Well, the day came, and the day went, and I still haven't seen that person. This has been over 15 years now. And I had to scrimp and cut corners, and I even had to borrow in order to pay my bill that I was expecting to pay with the money I had loaned that person. But from that point on, I decided, it's not worth ruining a relationship. When you give somebody money and you give it out of the goodness of your heart, it's much more different than extending a loan to somebody. It's that expectation of being paid back that can ruin a relationship. Well, as we look at the text this morning, oh, by the way, please don't rush up after service and ask me for money. Okay? Just because I say I don't lend, I give. I said I will give when I have the ability to help you out. So I don't want to see a long line at the end of church saying, all right, Pastor, give it up, because I don't have much to give. But what I have that can help somebody, I'm willing to do so. Well, last time we saw that the Israelites were to give their tithes as an act of obedience and worship. And I just want to reiterate the point that whether or not you tithe or give, however you give, that it's a matter of the heart. That's right. You give because you have been blessed. You give for the cause of Christ to be advanced. Yes. You're giving as an act of worshiping the Lord. And if that's not the attitude that you have, then you have the wrong attitude. Well, now this flows on to the next passage that we're considering. We're to give our offerings to the Lord joyfully, but He wants us to go deeper in our giving. And that's found out in Deuteronomy chapter 15. They were to be holy in giving to the poor. We saw they were supposed to be holy in giving to the Lord, to His cause, but we're also to be holy in giving to the poor. There's a lesson for us here as well, if we are to be holy in our giving. So look with me at Deuteronomy chapter 15. And I want to look first at verses 1 through 6. And we will find for the Israelites that the year of release canceled debts. The year of release canceled debts. Beginning in verse 1. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts. And this is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner you may require it, but you shall give up your claim to what is owed by your brother, except when there may be no poor among you, for the Lord will greatly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe with care all these commandments which I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, just as He promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. The year of release canceled debts. This was supposed to occur every 7 years, which follows the Sabbath pattern that God has already established. You know that the 7th day they were supposed to rest from their labors. They were supposed to work the land for 6 years, and in the 7th year they were supposed to let the land go rest. And every 7 years they were supposed to cancel all debts that had been incurred. This was a way to reset the clock in Israel, so that no one, no Hebrew, no Jew would be seriously in debt. It was a reset, and what a wonderful process that would be if we had that today, wouldn't it?
Amen.
But you see, the nation belonged to God, and He wanted His people to know how to be together, to be the people of God. And you know, just looking at some of you, I'm sure you have the experience of being saddled with debt.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's school debts or credit card debts or a mortgage. You know, things get tough sometimes when you're going through a tough financial period, and the weight of that debt can crush you, can cause you to say, I don't know, I can't make it. I have to choose between paying this bill and eating. I have to choose between keeping the mortgage going or making a car payment or having insurance on the car. And so it can become crushing. But within the economy of the Jews in Israel, when they were to get into the promised land, God had devised a way to make sure that Israel's economy stayed sane. That the rich didn't get richer and the poor didn't get poorer. Because you know, that's what happens. Rich people began to prey on the poor, those who are least able to handle things financially. And they extract interest on them and put them in a bad situation. God says it's not going to be that way with my people. So He is the one who instituted the year of release. But you want to hear something sad? There's no evidence in the Bible that the nation of Israel ever acted on the year of release. There's no example that they did that. And every 50 years was even a bigger celebration. It was called the year of the Jubilee, where those who had sold their land to somebody else, they got their land back. And there's no evidence that the year of Jubilee was ever celebrated by the children of Israel. But we need to understand what it is that God is doing. He's saying that the debts were to be canceled. Now, some scholars say that what was canceled was just the interest on the debt. I don't know about you, but every time I make that mortgage payment, I realize that all I'm doing is paying interest. You know, you buy a house for a certain amount and you more than triple it in interest payments over the 30 years. And so it would be wonderful if my interest was canceled and all I had to do was work on the principal. You know, that house would be paid off pretty quickly, wouldn't it? Some scholars think that what was canceled was 1 year of the debt, that in that 7th year, the debt that they were supposed to pay back for that year was canceled. But I agree with other scholars that say that the entire remaining debt was canceled. Because that seems to fit with who God is. God is the one who wipes your slate clean. So, what's important to understand, though, is that it is whose release? It's the Lord's release. It's not the release of the person who is holding the debt in their hand, even though they're the ones that have to say, okay, you don't have to pay me back anymore. But it's the Lord's release, because it's coming out of the generosity of God. And because God is a generous God, He wants His people to be a generous people, especially toward one another. But He did allow an exception for the foreigners, those who were not Jews, in verse 3. You can require them to continue to pay their debt because they're not part of the family of God. And then there's this interesting statement in verse 4. Except when there may be no poor among you, for the Lord will greatly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. God's plan and God's design was for Israel to be a prosperous nation. And everyone in the land was supposed to be prosperous. You know what it took? Just obeying His word. If they had just obeyed His word, then everybody would have been prosperous. But you know, that's not how people are. You have to think about the attitudes of people. There are just some people who are greedy. They want more and more and more. And if it means taking from you, they'll take from you. Even within the land of Israel, there were those who wanted to gain more and more, even at the expense of other people. But God said, my plan, my design is that if everybody obeys my command, I will bless them and bless them and bless them, and there won't be any poor among you. And they would be blessed so much that as a nation, they would lend to other nations, and they would never have to borrow from other nations. You know, there's a verse in Proverbs 22:7. Many of you know Proverbs 22:6, which says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The very next verse says that the borrower is the servant to the lender. When you borrow from somebody, you become their slave, because you got to pay them back. And God is saying to His people, you will not be a slave to another nation, because you're going to be the one that will lend to others because of the blessings that I will give to you. You will not become subject to them. They will not rule over you. You will not have to answer to them. because I'm going to bless your doors off. But all they had to do was just obey His word. Don't depend on somebody else. Depend on God. See Him as your source of blessing. And God wants to bless His people. Verse 6. Verse 5 and 6. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God to observe with care all the commandments which I command you today, for the Lord your God will bless you just as He promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. It's a simple matter of obeying God's word. So, what does this mean for you and me today? Free those who owe you. Free those who owe you. God speaks of the year of release. It's the year of the Lord's release. He wants us to be generous, and one way to be generous is to free those who owe you anything. Acknowledge and enjoy God's blessings on you. If God has put you in a place where you are being blessed, and you have loaned something to somebody, you know God is your source of blessing. Are you going to miss what He has blessed you with? No. When you give to others, God gives to you. And so, don't try to get every nickel out of somebody. You know, I lent you $50 last week. I want my $50. And if I don't get it by such and such a date, it's going to go up to $55 that you owe me.
You're right.
No. It's a wonderful thing to be able to say, look, I know that you're having struggles and you really needed that help. I'm glad to have been able to help you. You don't have to pay me back. Let me get real. I remember when I stuck out on my own, had my own apartment, and, you know, being young and dumb, you know, I get paid. And first of all, the first car that I had, always knew when my payday was coming. Because the week before I got paid, something would happen with my car. And it was like the car was saying, okay, you're going to put some money into me this week. And, you know, so I didn't stress out about it, but, you know, I'd have to figure out how I was going to pay for that repair on my car. And, you know, I didn't like to cook, so I ate out a lot. And so, you know, spending money up that way, and every now and then I would run short before the next payday. Have you been there? I mean, I feel like I'm by myself. You run short. And so I would get on the phone and I'd say, Mom, Dad, could I borrow $50 until I get paid? Oh yeah, you can borrow $50, and, you know, I'd go and get the money, and it would help me to make it to payday. But, you know, when you get paid, you have to pay that money back. You find you're in the same hole again. You know, and so then you find out you're short again, and so you ask for money again, and then you pay it back, and you ask, and you pay it back. You know, it would have been so nice to hear the words, you don't have to pay it back. I want to see you get on your feet. You know, I had parents like that. I want to see you get on your feet. You don't have to pay me back. That debt is canceled. What I gave to you was a gift. You see what it can do to free somebody who owes you something? That's generosity. And that's the way the Lord wants us to live. The year of release for Israel is you saying today, I'm going to cancel what you owe me. You don't have to pay me back. The second one, The Israelites were to be generous. Verses 7 through 11. If there is among you a poor man of your brethren within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God has given you, you shall not harden your heart nor shut your hand from your poor brother. But you shall open your hand wide to him and willingly lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand. And your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. And he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin among you. You shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him. Because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works, and in all to which you put your hand. For the poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy in your land. So the Lord is telling Israel to be generous with the poor. Now there is no contradiction between what is said in verse 4, except when there be no poor among you, and verse 11, for the poor will never cease from the land. The Lord sees ahead of time. He knows the hearts of people. He knows that there will be people who will be disobedient and not follow his commands, and therefore they will be poor. So what were they supposed to do? They were to soften their hearts and open their hand to those who had needs, and give sufficiently to meet the need. Now, it doesn't say wants. There's a difference between needs and wants. People can come up to you and say, I need a Cadillac. Oh, well, that's nice. You mean you want a Cadillac. You don't need one. You want one. Just like somebody says, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Okay, I can give you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. No, I want a steak. Hey, that's a want. I mean, that's a want. That's not a need. You need something in your stomach. I can give you something in your stomach. I can give you some peanut butter crackers if you're really hungry. Don't come to me demanding that you need to have a steak, or you need to have lobster, or whatever. You know, like at men's fellowship, you go to the restaurant, and see, my brother said you can order whatever you want on the menu. So you thought I was going somewhere else, didn't you? You can order whatever you want on the menu, but you have a dollar with it. You see, you can meet somebody's needs, but not necessarily their wants. God is saying that you are to be generous toward those who have legitimate need. Meet the need. Don't be tight-fisted. You see somebody, their eyes are glazed over, and their tongue is out, and their stomach is bloated, and you can tell they haven't eaten in a while. And you say, well, let me take my lunch and go somewhere else. I don't feel like sharing today. That's not being generous toward somebody who has a need. God wants his people to be generous and you see, it starts with the heart, though. If your heart is not right, you're not going to respond the way that God wants you to. You have to have a heart that is not hard, a heart that is soft towards other people. And if your heart is soft, then your hands will be open. So if you have a hard heart, your fist will be closed. And isn't it like God to know how we are? Because he tells the Israelites, don't be devious. You don't believe that? It's right here in the text. Don't be devious. Look at verse 9. He says, beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the seventh year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. What that means is the year of release is coming. It's almost here. And you know that if you lend anything, you're going to have to cancel that debt. So you say, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You know, if it was the first, second, or third year, I'd have a chance to recoup what I lent to you. But since the year of release is almost here, and whatever I give, I'm just throwing away good money. And that's the way some people think. God says, don't let that evil thought cross your mind. Don't be devious. A person has a need. It doesn't matter when that need is. If you have the ability to meet that need, meet that need. And if you refuse, the person can call out to God. And for you, it becomes sin. James 4:17 says, if you know to do good and you do not do it, to you it is sin. Mm-hmm. When you have the opportunity to do a good thing and you refuse to do it, that's the sin of omission. That is sin. Rather, you're to be joyful in your giving. You see that that's a common theme. When we give to the Lord, we're supposed to do it joyfully. That's what he's telling the children of Israel. And he's saying here, don't have a negative attitude. Don't let your heart be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. If you have the right attitude in giving, God's going to bless you. Don't you understand that? God is going to bless you. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you give somebody $10, that God's going to bless you with 20. That's what some of the preachers out there might be saying. You know, you sow some seed money here, and you know, you give $5 to this cause, and you won't get 50 back. I don't know what mathematics that is, but that's not God's mathematics. Well, you see, you may give money and God blesses you with health and with strength. Your blessing may be that you have your family intact and everybody's doing well. You know, there's some people who would love to have what you have. You know, they have children who have gone astray. They have family members who are doing poorly when it comes to health. And God has blessed your family. You know, that is a blessing when you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And so, don't expect a tit-for-tat kind of response. That if you are generous towards someone who's poor and you give them X amount of money, that God's going to at least give you that. That's the wrong attitude of the heart. Because if you truly trust the Lord, you leave his blessings up to him. Amen. You'll say, Lord, however you want to bless me is fine. And if there's nothing else, you've already blessed me enough. You've blessed me with salvation. You don't owe me anything, Lord. So anything that you do give me is a blessing. And I am grateful that you can use me to be a blessing to somebody else. They were to deal with the poor in their midst. And why would there be poor people in Israel? Well, first, they never checked the year of release. And so that meant that the distribution of wealth got way off kilter because they didn't keep going back to square one where everybody's on a level playing field. Some were poor because they were just disobedient. They didn't follow God's word, and so they found themselves not being blessed. Some became poor by their circumstances. You know, like the father died, and then the children are fatherless, and the wife is a widow, and she finds herself in a situation where she can't provide for her family. That was through circumstances. And then there would be foreigners who would come into the land of Israel who would be poor. So there would be poor people. And the Lord is saying there will always be an opportunity for Israel to be generous. Always an opportunity for Israel to be generous. For you and me, Christians should be known by their generosity. Christians should be known by their generosity. Hospitals were started by the generosity of believers. Many ministries were formed out of the generosity of believers to meet the needs of people. And that's the way that we should be known, not just in a big way, but on an individual level. You should be seen as a generous person, not as one who keeps your wallet or your pocketbook under severe guard, where nobody can get into it, that you don't open it up in front of people because you don't want people to know how much you have. It doesn't matter how much you have. What matters is how much you give. Are you willing to give to help somebody else? What's that song? If I could help somebody, then my living would not be in vain. It's all don't like that song, do you? Let's move on. 3. The Israelites were to treat servants right. They were to treat servants right. Verses 12 through 18. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you send him away free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall supply him liberally from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your winepress. From what the Lord has blessed you with, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this thing today. And if it happens that he says to you, I will not go away from you because he loves you and your house, since he prospers with you, then you shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear to the door, and he shall be your servant forever. Also to your female servant you shall do likewise. It shall not seem hard to you when you send him away free from you, for he has been worth a double-hired servant in serving you 6 years. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. The Israelites were to treat servants right. Now, a Hebrew who just was in dire financial states or owed somebody something could sell himself as a servant for up to 6 years to pay off the debt. And so, in that situation, after serving for 6 years, the person would be freed from the debt in the 7th year. Now, this didn't necessarily coincide with the year of release, because that 6-year period could start at any time. But at the end of that 6 years, when they entered into the 7th year, the master would then have to release that person, saying, okay, your debt has been paid off. You've worked for me for 6 years. And not just sending them away, but to give them a generous severance pay. To give out of their flocks and out of their grains and out of their vineyard, so that the person now who has worked for 6 years can start a new life. They have something to start with. And the Lord says, understand that person has been a blessing to you, has been better than a double-hired servant. In what way? Well, first of all, you got free labor. You didn't have to pay anything to that person for the time that they served you. And because they were repaying a debt, you know that they would give their best effort. They weren't just a hired person who was just doing a job, and when the master wasn't looking, they would slack off. And so that person would be a better worker to you, so that when they had finished meeting their requirements, you should be generous toward them so that they could start a new life. But what would happen if they decided that they have it good where they are? They don't want to go. Maybe they were able to get a wife and have children while they were in your presence, and they didn't want to have to leave and start over somewhere else because you've been such a good master to them. Or it's an evidence that they were treated very well, that they would love the master. And so in that case, the ear was pierced as a sign of continual service. Now, I don't need to offend any of the men in our congregation, but that's one reason why I ain't getting my ear pierced. I ain't nobody saved, you know. From the scriptural perspective, the only time I see an ear piercing is in this instance. And so that's just a little insight to me. But it was to be a sign that that person had decided that they would not leave their master. They would be the servant of that master for as long as they lived. So, why was this so important to the Lord? He says, I want you to remember something. You were slaves in Egypt. And I redeemed you. I freed you from Egyptian bondage. Don't forget that. So don't turn around and put someone else in bondage to you. Remember how generous God was to them. So, for you and me today, be kind to those who serve you. Not just someone who's working off a debt to you, but someone who has to minister to you in some kind of way. Be kind to them. Now, sometimes it's your children. And you talk to some kids, they feel like they are slaves. You can be kind to your children as they serve you. Dispense mercy and grace. If you are a supervisor at work, if you are a leader of a ministry, be kind to those who serve you, who serve under you. Extend mercy and grace to them. Don't be a demanding kind of person where it's, you owe me. And so I got you by your neck, and you're going to do what I want you to do. And there's no sense of blessing. There's no sense of what God has done in your life, what God has freed you from. You see, we need to imitate God, because God is a generous God. And we are followers of Jesus Christ, and we ought to look like Him. Right? And that's one of the things that we say in the Bible, that we're made in the image of God. And to be made in His image, one way is to be generous just like He is. To imitate or to strive for His attributes. There are things that God is that we can never be. But there are things that we can do to a point to look like Him. And one of those things is being generous. What I want you to remember is that there is great reward for being generous. There is great reward for being generous. So, what are you going to do about this message? You going to go home and forget about it? I want to encourage you to search your heart this week and ask yourself this: am I a generous person? Will people say that about me? That I'm generous? Is there someone around me with a need that I can meet? If God gives you an opportunity to help somebody this week, will you do it? And let me say this. Don't wait for someone to come up to you and say, I have a need. Open your eyes. See with the eyes of Jesus Christ. Because there are people around you who have needs. And maybe it's pride, or maybe they feel unworthy of asking for help. But you see that they have a need and you can help them. And maybe you can't help the entire need, but you can do a little bit. Are you willing to be generous to meet whatever needs you can? So dear friend, I hate to tell you this, but you're a slave to Satan. If you never trusted Jesus Christ as your Savior, you're his slave. But only God can cancel that debt that you owe. Jesus did that on the cross when he said these three words. It is finished. The debt is paid. It has been canceled. That speaks to God's generosity. He did for you what you could not do for yourself. You could be released from the debt of sin by confessing that you're a sinner, repenting of your sin, believing that Jesus Christ died on the cross for you, and receiving him as your Savior. If you have never done so, I want to encourage you to see the generosity of God towards you and receive it as his free gift of salvation. Let's pray.